Abundance by Ezra Klein and Thompson is the best-selling book. The book begins by asking a powerful question: why does America feel stuck? Even though the U.S. is one of the richest nations in history, many people feel that life is harder, opportunities are shrinking, and progress is slowing. Homes are too expensive, healthcare is unaffordable, infrastructure is crumbling, and political debates feel endless but unproductive. Ezra Klein and Thompson argue that this is because America has fallen into a scarcity mindset. Scarcity means constantly worrying there isn't enough. Enough housing, enough healthcare, enough energy, enough jobs. In such a mindset, politics becomes zero-sum. If someone wins, another must lose. The authors propose a different vision: abundance politics. Instead of fighting over limited resources, abundance means building more so that opportunity and prosperity are widely available. Importantly, abundance is not about greed or waste. It is about ensuring everyone has access to the basics of a good life. The rest of the book shows how scarcity plays out in key areas of American life: housing, infrastructure, energy, healthcare, and innovation, and how abundance could transform the future. Chapter 1. The Politics of Scarcity. This chapter explains how scarcity became the default in American politics. In the mid-20th century, the U.S. was bold and ambitious: highways, suburbs, universities, and even the moon landing. There was a collective belief that big things were possible. But by the 1970s, optimism faded. Economic crises, rising debt fears, and cultural divisions made leaders cautious. Over time, rules and regulations multiplied. Local communities gained more veto power. Projects became harder to approve. Saying no became politically safer than saying yes. The result: America stopped building. Scarcity politics creates constant conflict. When housing is limited, homeowners block new construction. When healthcare is expensive, every reform sparks fights about who pays. When infrastructure is weak, projects stall because no one wants disruption. The key idea: scarcity is not natural, it is a political choice. The U.S. could build more but often chooses not to. Chapter 2. Housing and the Geography of Opportunity. Housing is the clearest example of manufactured scarcity. In cities like San Francisco, New York, and Boston, jobs are plentiful and wages are high. But housing is so limited that only the wealthy can afford to live there. Restrictive zoning laws, neighborhood resistance, and endless approval processes prevent new housing from being built. This scarcity hurts everyone. Workers cannot move to better job markets. Young families cannot afford homes near good schools. Renters pay skyrocketing prices while homeowners enjoy rising values. The economy loses trillions because labor is trapped in less productive areas. The politics are driven by NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Homeowners oppose new buildings, fearing they will lower property values or change neighborhood character. Meanwhile, those who need housing, renters and newcomers, have less political power. The authors argue that abundance in housing would reduce inequality, help workers, and make cities more dynamic. Movements like YIMBY, Yes in My Backyard, and state reforms in California show that change is possible, but progress is slow. Chapter 3. Infrastructure and the Costs of Inaction. The U.S. once led the world in infrastructure. Now, it struggles to maintain what already exists. Bridges, roads, airports, and transit systems are aging. Projects that should take years take decades. Costs are often double or triple what other countries pay for similar work. The authors point to several causes. Too many overlapping regulations and reviews. Local opposition and lawsuits. Political polarization that prevents long-term investment. Infrastructure scarcity affects daily life. Poor transit makes commutes exhausting. Congested highways waste time and fuel. Weak water and power systems create health and safety risks. Abundance in infrastructure would mean fast trains, reliable public transport, safe bridges, modern airports, and clean utilities. Other countries, from Japan to France to China, show what's possible when governments prioritize building. The deeper message: America has lost its building spirit, the belief that progress requires construction and ambition. Chapter 4, Energy, Climate, and Building for the Future. This chapter shifts to one of the biggest challenges of our time, energy. On one hand, fossil fuels are abundant but dangerous for the climate. On the other, renewable energy is clean but difficult to scale because of regulations, local opposition, and outdated infrastructure. The authors argue that solving climate change requires building at unprecedented speed. Solar farms, wind turbines, transmission lines, battery facilities, and nuclear plants. But here, the scarcity mindset strikes again. Local communities block wind farms. Environmental lawsuits delay power lines. Nuclear energy is stalled by fear and red tape, even though it produces clean power. Abundance in energy means not just cleaner energy but more energy, enough to power homes, factories, cars, and innovation. Without abundant clean energy, the U.S. cannot fight climate change or remain competitive in the global economy. This chapter also highlights the geopolitical stakes. The countries that master clean energy will dominate the 21st century. Chapter 4, Energy, Climate, and Building for the Future. This chapter shifts to one of the biggest challenges of our time, energy. On one hand, fossil fuels are abundant but dangerous for the climate. On the other, renewable energy is clean but difficult to scale because of regulations, local opposition, and outdated infrastructure. The authors argue that solving climate change requires building at unprecedented speed. Solar farms, wind turbines, transmission lines, battery facilities, and nuclear plants. But here, the scarcity mindset strikes again. Local communities block wind farms. Environmental lawsuits delay power lines. Nuclear energy is stalled by fear and red tape, even though it produces clean power. Abundance in energy means not just cleaner energy but more energy, enough to power homes, factories, cars, and innovation. Without abundant clean energy, the U.S. cannot fight climate change or remain competitive in the global economy. This chapter also highlights the geopolitical stakes. The countries that master clean energy will dominate the 21st century. Chapter 5, Healthcare and Human Well-Being. Healthcare in America is another example of manufactured scarcity. The U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other nation, yet millions remain uninsured or underinsured. Costs are the highest in the world. Scarcity here is not about lack of doctors but about financial barriers that make care inaccessible. The pandemic exposed both strengths and weaknesses. Strengths: the U.S. developed vaccines at record speed. Weaknesses: hospitals were overwhelmed, supply chains failed, and access to care was unequal. Abundance in healthcare would mean universal, affordable care, more doctors, more hospitals, more preventive services, and less administrative waste. It doesn't mean endless spending, it means smarter systems. Health is also tied to opportunity. Poor health keeps people out of the workforce, reduces productivity, and deepens inequality. A healthier society is not just morally right but economically stronger. Chapter 6, Innovation, Technology, and the Spirit of Building. Here, the authors look at America's decline in innovation culture. In the 20th century, the U.S. led the world in bold projects: the space race, computer revolution, and scientific breakthroughs. Today, progress feels slower, because fear and regulation dominate. New technologies, biotech, AI, clean energy, face suspicion and resistance. Instead of embracing innovation, society often worries about risks. Scarcity politics amplifies these fears, making it harder to take bold steps. The authors argue that abundance requires restoring a culture of ambition, supporting research and development, streamlining approvals for new technologies, celebrating experimentation, even failure. They compare it to the moon landing, a project that seemed impossible but was achieved because the nation believed in building big things. Today, challenges like climate change, inequality, and disease require the same ambition. Chapter 7, Toward a Politics of Abundance. The final chapter ties everything together. Scarcity politics has left America stagnant, divided, and pessimistic. It makes every issue a fight over limited resources. But abundance politics offers a different vision. More housing, affordable cities, less homelessness. And more infrastructure, faster travel, safer systems. More clean energy, climate solutions, and economic growth. More healthcare access, healthier, more productive society. More innovation, new industries, new opportunities. Abundance is not utopian. It is practical and achievable if America chooses to build again. That requires political courage, cultural change, and a belief in progress. The book closes with a reminder: scarcity is not inevitable. It is a choice. Which means abundance, too, is a choice. Conclusion: the abundant future. Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson argue that America must rediscover its capacity to build. The 20th century proved that bold projects are possible. The 21st century demands the same ambition, whether in housing, infrastructure, energy, healthcare, or innovation. The politics of abundance is about replacing fear with confidence, replacing limits with possibility, and ensuring prosperity is shared widely. The future of America depends on whether it chooses to stay stuck in scarcity or to embrace abundance.